Three punks filmed the waitress sobbing behind the diner, mocking her, kicking trash at her, posting her humiliation for the world to laugh at. But the moment the Mafia boss saw her face on that viral clip, his entire convoy rolled into town like Judgment on wheels. Now he's standing behind her, and the boys who laughed are about to learn who she really belongs to. If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. 23-year-old Lillian Alvarez stepped through the back door of Dale's diner into the cooling September air, balancing a trash bag in one hand and her aching lower back with the other. Her apron, cream-colored that morning, was now stained with ketchup, coffee, and grease from an 8-hour shift that felt like 20. Mascara had smudged beneath her eyes from the humidity of the kitchen, and her dark hair hung in a tired ponytail that had long since given up any pretense of neatness. She didn't see the group of college-age guys leaning against a silver SUV in the corner of the parking lot, didn't hear them snickering as they pulled out their phones. Being exhausted meant you missed the warnings. The tallest one, red plaid shirt, cocky grin, stepped forward first, his phone already recording. "Yo, check it out. It's the little waitress." Lillian looked up, startled, her arms instinctively crossing over her stained apron. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Rough day at work?" Another one chimed in, this one in a blue hoodie, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. She tried to smile, tried to diffuse it. "I'm just taking out the trash. Excuse me." "That accent, though." Blue hoodie laughed, elbowing his friend. "Say something else. Come on, entertain us." Lillian's cheeks burned. She clutched the trash bag tighter and tried to move past them, but red plaid blocked her path. "Where you going? We're talking to you." "Please, I just want to." He snatched the trash bag from her hands and swung it over his head like a trophy. His friends howled with laughter. Lillian reached for it, panic rising in her throat, but another boy, dark-haired, smirking, shoved her shoulder hard enough to make her stumble backward. Her heel caught the edge of the curb. She fell. The pavement slammed into her palms, her knees, her pride. The contents of the bag, half-eaten fries, soggy napkins, broken plates, spilled across her lap and onto the asphalt around her. The laughter grew louder, crueler. Red plaid crouched down, shoving his phone inches from her face as tears began sliding down her cheeks. "Oh man, look at her. She's crying." "Cry harder," another voice shouted. Lillian tried to push herself up, but her hands were shaking too badly. One of the boys kicked the trash toward her, sending a ketchup-smeared wrapper onto her shoulder. Another mimicked her accent in a high-pitched, mocking tone. "Please, stop," she whispered, her voice breaking. But they didn't stop. They circled her like wolves, phones out, recording every angle of her humiliation. One of them zoomed in on her mascara-streaked face. Another panned to the food staining her apron. "This is gold, bro. This is going everywhere." Finally, after what felt like hours but was only 90 seconds, they walked away, still laughing, still filming, still replaying the footage on their screens as they climbed into the SUV and sped off. Lillian sat there on the pavement, trembling, covered in garbage and shame, too broken to even stand. 20 minutes later, Red Plaid posted the video with the caption, "Waitress of the Year, #crybaby, #hilarious." By midnight, it had 50,000 views. 90 miles away, in a private estate surrounded by iron gates and surveillance cameras, Luke Romani sat in his study nursing a glass of whiskey. The room was dark except for the glow of a single desk lamp and the muted television playing a news channel he wasn't watching. His phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. Luke ignored it at first. It was late, and his lieutenants knew better than to bother him unless it was urgent. But the phone buzzed again, then a third time. With a sigh, he picked it up. A text from Enzo, one of his most trusted men. "Boss, you need to see this, now." Below the message was a link. Luke frowned and clicked it, expecting another territorial dispute or cartel provocation. Instead, his screen filled with shaky video footage of a parking lot. A young woman on the ground, boys circling her, laughing. Food splattered across her apron, tears streaming down her face. Luke's jaw tightened. Then the camera zoomed in on her face and the whiskey glass slipped from his hand. It didn't shatter. It hit the carpet and rolled, amber liquid seeping into the fibers. Luke didn't notice. He was staring at the screen, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in 20 years. That face. Those eyes dark, wide, terrified. The shape of her jaw. The way her hands trembled as she tried to push herself up. Mateo. The man who'd taken 3 bullets meant for Luke's chest. The man who'd died gripping Luke's collar, blood bubbling from his lips as he gasped. My daughter, Lillian, promise me, you protect her. Luke had promised. And then he'd let 20 years bury that promise under power, blood, and distance. Now Mateo's daughter was sobbing on the pavement while boys laughed and the world watched. Luke's hands shook as he opened his contacts and typed a message to every man in his crew. Suit up. We ride at dawn. Bring everyone. Within 30 minutes, 12 men replied. Luke's response was ice cold. To keep a promise. Luke didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study until dawn, the video playing on loop on his laptop screen. Each replay was a fresh knife to the chest. Each mocking laugh from those boys was another reminder of his failure. At 5:47 a.m., his front gate buzzed. Then again, and again. By 6 o'clock, 12 men stood in Luke's marble foyer, his inner circle, his brothers, the only people on earth he trusted with his life. Enzo arrived first, still buttoning his black suit jacket. Carmine came next, knuckles already wrapped, ready for violence. Victor pulled up last in his Escalade, concern etched across his scarred face. They gathered in the study without a word, sensing the weight in the air. Luke stood at the window, watching the sun bleed orange across the horizon. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, dangerous. The girl in that video. Her name is Lillian Alvarez. Enzo frowned. Alvarez? Why does that name? Mateo Alvarez. Luke turned to face them. 20 years ago. The warehouse ambush on Fletcher Street. Recognition rippled through the room. Every man there knew the story. It was legend in their world the night a young Luke Romani should have died but didn't. Mateo was the one who saved you, Victor said slowly. Luke nodded, his jaw tight. Took 3 bullets meant for my chest. Died in my arms on that warehouse floor, while I screamed for a medic who never came fast enough. The room went silent. Carmine's fists clenched. That's his daughter? 23 years old. Working herself to exhaustion at some nowhere diner while college boys treat her like garbage for internet clout. Luke's voice cracked just slightly, but enough for his men to hear the guilt bleeding through. And I let it happen. Boss, you didn't know. I promised him. Luke slammed his fist on the desk, rattling the whiskey decanter. His last words, his dying breath. He grabbed my collar, blood pouring from his mouth, and made me swear I'd protect his family. I looked him in the eyes and promised. And then I walked away. Enzo stepped forward carefully. You sent money. For years, you... Anonymous envelopes aren't protection, Enzo. Christmas cards with no return address aren't keeping a promise. Luke's hands trembled as he replayed the video one more time. I convinced myself they'd moved on. That they didn't need me. That my guilt didn't matter as long as they had money in their account. He paused, staring at Lillian's tear-streaked face frozen on the screen. I was wrong. The memory came unbidden, sharp and vivid as broken glass. Fletcher Street, August 2005. Luke was 23, young, reckless, hungry to prove himself in his father's organization. The deal was supposed to be simple. Exchange cash for shipping routes, shake hands, walk away. But the Castellano family had other plans. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions at once. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like lightning. Luke dove behind a stack of crates, bullets chewing through wood and concrete around him. He didn't see the shooter flanking from the left, didn't hear the footsteps over the chaos. But Mateo Alvarez, a dock worker who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time, saw everything. Get down. Mateo threw himself in front of Luke just as the shooter fired. 3 bullets. Chest, shoulder, abdomen. Mateo collapsed into Luke's arms, blood spreading across his shirt like spilled wine. No, no, no. Luke pressed his hands against the wounds, but the blood kept coming. Stay with me. Medic, I need a medic. Mateo's hand grabbed Luke's collar, pulling him close. His eyes were fading, but his grip was iron. My daughter. Blood bubbled at his lips. Lillian, 8 years old. Promise me, Luke. You're gonna be fine. Promise me. Mateo's voice broke. If anything happens to her, you protect her. Swear it. Tears blurred Luke's vision. I promise. I swear to God. I promise. Mateo's grip loosened. His eyes went still. And Luke knelt there in the blood and the gunfire, holding a dead man who'd saved his life, screaming until his throat went raw. Luke blinked, pulling himself back to the present. His men watched him with understanding they'd all lost brothers. They knew the weight of broken promises. So what's the play, boss? Carmine asked quietly. Luke straightened, and when he spoke, his voice carried the cold authority that had built an empire. We go to that town. We find those boys. We make them understand what it means to hurt someone under my protection." "And the girl?" Victor asked. Luke's expression softened just for a moment. "We show her she's not alone anymore. That her father's sacrifice still means something. That I haven't forgotten." Enzo nodded slowly. "This isn't business, is it?" "No." Luke met each man's eyes in turn. "This is family. This is honor. This is the one thing in my life I have a chance to make right." Carmine cracked his knuckles. "Then let's make it right." Luke pulled out his phone and opened his full contact list, every enforcer, every soldier, every man who'd sworn loyalty to the Romani name. "Get everyone," he said. "I want a convoy that makes that town stop breathing when we roll in. I want them to understand that what happened to Lillian Alvarez was a mistake they'll spend the rest of their lives regretting." "How many, boss?" Luke's smile was cold as winter steel. "All of them." The first warning came at 7:32 a.m. Jimmy Cord, a truck driver hauling freight down Route 18, spotted them through his rearview mirror, a line of black luxury vehicles stretching back so far he couldn't see where it ended. Cadillacs, Lincolns, Mercedes sedan, all moving in perfect formation like a funeral procession designed by the devil himself. He grabbed his CB radio. "Breaker, breaker, anyone on 18 southbound? You seeing what I'm seeing?" The response crackled back immediately. "Copy that. Counted 12 so far. Make that 15. Jesus, they're still coming. Who the hell moves like that?" A pause. Then a voice thick with dread. "Only one crew I know. The Romanis." Jimmy's hands tightened on the wheel. God help whoever they're going to see. By 8 o'clock, the convoy had been spotted at 3 different gas stations, 2 rest stops, and a roadside diner. Each time, the same reaction. People went quiet, eyes went wide, and phones came out to record the spectacle. By 8:47 a.m., the first post hit social media. "Romani crew heading south. Looks like war." The video spread faster than wildfire. Within an hour, someone had traced the route. The destination became clear. Millbrook, Ohio. Population 6,000. A town small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business. And by 9:15 a.m., everyone in Millbrook knew the Mafia was coming. Dale Hutchins stood behind the counter of his diner, watching the parking lot empty like water down a drain. Breakfast rush had been building nicely, pancakes on the griddle, coffee brewing, regulars laughing at the corner booth. Then Pauline Carter burst through the door, eyes wild. "Dale, you need to close. Right now." "What are you?" "The Romanis are coming here. To Millbrook. Someone posted photos on Facebook. They're 20 minutes out." The coffee pot slipped from Dale's hand and shattered on the tile floor. "Why?" His voice came out strangled. "Why would they?" Then he remembered. The video. The crying waitress. The boys laughing. Lillian. Oh God. Dale's face went white. "It's because of what happened to Lillian." Pauline grabbed her purse. "I'm leaving. You should too. But she works here. If they think Then you'd better start praying, Dale." She was gone before he could respond. Within 10 minutes, the diner was empty. Customers threw cash on tables and fled. His cook disappeared out the back. Even the dishwasher, a kid who'd never missed a shift in 2 years, grabbed his jacket and ran. Dale stood alone in the sudden silence, hands shaking, wondering if he should lock the doors or if that would just make things worse. He'd seen the video, of course. Everyone had. He'd been in the kitchen when it happened, heard the commotion outside, but told himself it wasn't his business. Boys will be boys. Lillian was tough. She'd be fine. Now those choices felt like a noose tightening around his neck. 3 blocks away, red plaid shirt whose real name was Brandon Mitchell, woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Dude, delete the video, now. My dad says the mob is coming." "Brandon, what the hell did you do?" "They're going to kill us." Brandon sat up, heart hammering. He opened Facebook and felt his stomach drop through the floor. His video of Lillian had 127,000 views now. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the new video being shared underneath it, black cars rolling down Route 18, a convoy that looked like something from a movie. And the caption, "Romani crew confirmed heading to Millbrook. Someone's about to learn a very hard lesson." The comments were even worse. "They're coming for those boys who hurt that waitress. I hope they make them suffer. That girl's connected to the mob? Those idiots are dead." Brandon's hands shook so badly he could barely type. He called Austin Blue Hoodie, who answered on the first ring, voice panicked. Did you see? Delete everything," Brandon gasped. "The video, The posts, all of it. It's too late. People already downloaded it. My mom is losing it. She's talking about sending me to my uncle's in Michigan. What do we do? I don't know. Austin's voice cracked. Maybe we apologize. Maybe we apologize to the MOB? The line went dead. Brandon tried calling his other friends. Half didn't answer. The ones who did were either crying or yelling or already fleeing town with their families. He looked at the video one more time, Lillian's tear-streaked face, the laughter, the mocking, and felt ice flood his veins. What had they done? At the Mitchell household, Brandon's father paced the living room like a caged animal, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it costs. Send him to your sisters in Columbus. Today. Right now. He hung up and turned to Brandon with fury and terror warring in his eyes. Pack a bag. You're leaving. Dad, do you have any idea what you've done? The Romanis don't forgive. They don't forget. If Luke Romani is coming here personally. His voice broke. Just pack. Please. Down the street, Austin's mother was having the same conversation. So was the mother of the dark-haired boy who'd shoved Lillian. All across Millbrook, doors were locking. Families were fleeing. Business owners were closing early. The police station was overwhelmed with calls, but Chief Morrison had already made his position clear to his officers. If the Romanis roll in, we observe. We do not engage. We do not provoke. Understood? But sir, what if? I said, understood? Yes, sir. Because Morrison knew what everyone else was learning. When the Romanis came for you, the law couldn't help. Nobody could. In her small apartment above the laundromat, Lillian sat on her bed, staring at her phone. The video had exploded overnight. The comments were brutal. Her name was everywhere. People from high school were messaging her some kind. Most cruel. Her mother knocked softly. Mija, maybe you should stay home today. Don't go to work. I need the money, Mama. Lillian. I can't let them win. But her hands were shaking as she tied her hair back. Her reflection in the mirror showed the same tear-stained face from the video, and shame burned through her chest. She had no idea that 90 miles away, 12 black cars were crossing into Millbrook's town limits. She had no idea her entire life was about to change. The convoy entered Millbrook at 10:43 a.m. 12 black luxury vehicles rolled down Main Street in perfect formation, engines purring like predators stalking prey. The lead car, a Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows dark as midnight, moved with the kind of precision that comes from men who've driven into war zones and come out alive. Traffic stopped, not because of a light or a sign, but because drivers saw what was coming and simply froze, hands locked on steering wheels, breath caught in their throats. Mrs. Henderson, the elementary school librarian, pulled her Honda to the curb and locked her doors. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip her phone to call her husband. They're here, she whispered. Oh God, Bill, they're really here. The Romanis didn't speed, didn't blast music or rev engines or announce themselves with anything except their presence, and that was enough. The convoy turned onto Dale Street, moving past the post office where clerks pressed against the windows to watch, past Morrison's Hardware, where the owner flipped his sign to closed and disappeared into the back room, past the elementary school where teachers ushered children away from windows with forced smiles and racing hearts. Then the vehicles turned into the parking lot of Dale's diner, and the town held its breath. Inside the diner, Dale stood behind the counter, alone, watching through the window as the first car pulled into a parking space with military precision. Then the second, then the third. They formed a semicircle around the entrance, a wall of steel and tinted glass that looked like Judgment Day arriving on wheels. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Dale's heart hammered so hard he thought it might burst through his ribs. Sweat dripped down his back despite the air conditioning. His hands gripped the counter edge until his knuckles went white. Then, as if choreographed, every car door opened simultaneously. Men stepped out. Black suits, black ties, black sunglasses, tattoos creeping up necks and across knuckles. Expressions carved from stone, emotionless, cold, dangerous. 12 vehicles, 37 men. They moved with the kind of unity that comes from years of operating as a single organism. No one spoke, no one needed to. Each man took his position in the formation, creating a human barrier between the diner and the rest of the world. Dale felt his bladder threaten to give out. From the lead Escalade, the driver's door opened last. Luke Romani stepped out. He was 43 years old but looked ageless, the kind of man whose presence commanded rooms before he even spoke. His suit was immaculate, tailored perfectly to his frame. His dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples. His jaw was set like granite. but it was his eyes that made Dale's blood run cold. They swept across the parking lot, across the diner's windows, searching. Not with rage or fury, but with something far more dangerous: purpose. Luke adjusted his cuffs with deliberate slowness, then began walking toward the entrance. His men fell into formation behind him, boots hitting pavement in synchronized rhythm that sounded like a death march. Across the street, phones were already out. "Are you getting this? Oh my God, it's really them. Someone call the police." "The police aren't coming, you idiot. Nobody's coming." The video started uploading before Luke even reached the door. Within seconds, it was spreading: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, every social media platform lighting up with the same terrifying image. The Romani crew descending on Dale's diner like the hand of God reaching down to deliver judgment. In the apartment above the laundromat, Lillian was tying her work shoes when her phone exploded with notifications. "Lillian, are you seeing this? Don't go to work today. The MOB is at the diner right now." Her hands froze mid-knot. "Mama?" Her voice came out small, frightened. Her mother rushed in, phone in hand, face pale. "Mija, something's happening. People are saying—" Lillian grabbed her mother's phone and watched the live video someone was streaming. Black cars, men in suits, and leading them all, a man whose very presence seemed to bend the air around him. The video zoomed in on his face, and Lillian's heart stopped. She knew that face. Not from yesterday or last week, but from childhood, a hazy memory of a man kneeling in her father's funeral, tears streaming down his face as he pressed something into her mother's hands and whispered words Lillian had been too young to understand. "Luke," her mother breathed, recognizing him too. "Luke Romani. Why is he—" Lillian couldn't finish the sentence. But somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the fear and confusion, understanding began to dawn. At the diner, Luke reached the entrance and paused. His hand rested on the door handle, but he didn't pull it open. Instead, he turned to face his men, 37 soldiers, who'd followed him into hell more times than any of them could count. "Remember," Luke said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "We're not here for blood. We're here for justice. We're here to make sure Mateo Alvarez's daughter understands she is not alone in this world." Enzo nodded. "What about the boys?" Luke's smile was colder than winter steel. "They'll answer for what they did, but on Lillian's terms, not ours. She gets to decide how this ends." Carmine frowned. "And if she asks us to walk away, then we walk away." Luke's eyes hardened. "But we make damn sure they understand what mercy looks like when it comes from her, not from us." The men nodded as one. Luke pulled open the door. The bell chimed a cheerful, innocent sound that felt obscene in the moment. Dale stood behind the counter, face white as snow, hands trembling. Luke stepped inside, his crew filing in behind him with the precise movements of a military operation. They lined the walls, filled the booths, transformed the small-town diner into something that felt more like a courtroom. Luke approached the counter slowly, each footstep deliberate. "Where," he said quietly, "is Lillian Alvarez?" Dale's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Luke leaned forward slightly. "I'm not going to ask twice. She's not here. She's home. She's—" Dale's voice cracked. "Please, I didn't know. I didn't know she was connected to me," Luke finished. "She shouldn't have to be. That's the point." Luke's gaze remained fixed on Dale for 3 long seconds, long enough to make the diner owner's knees buckle. "Her address," Luke said quietly. Dale's hand trembled as he scribbled on a napkin. "Above the laundromat, 2 blocks east, apartment 2B. Please, I—" Luke took the napkin without another word and turned to his men. "Enzo, Victor, Carmine with me. The rest of you stay here. No one leaves. No one enters. Understood?" "Yes, boss." Luke walked out, 3 of his most trusted men flanking him. The remaining crew stood like statues throughout the diner, silent and immovable. Dale collapsed into a chair, head in his hands, whispering prayers he hadn't spoken since childhood. The walk to the laundromat took 4 minutes. It felt like 4 hours. Word had already spread through Millbrook's 4 square miles. People watched from windows, from doorways, from behind parked cars. Some filmed. Most just stared, trying to process the impossible. Luke Romani, the man whose name made hardened criminals go pale, was walking through their town in broad daylight. Luke ignored them all. His focus was singular. The apartment above the laundromat where Mateo's daughter, the girl he'd sworn to protect, was probably terrified out of her mind. They climbed the narrow outdoor staircase to the 2nd floor. The metal steps creaked under their weight. Paint peeled from the railings. A child's bicycle lay abandoned on the landing. Luke stopped in front of 2B and raised his hand to knock. But before his knuckles touched the wood, the door opened. Lillian stood there, still in her stained work uniform from yesterday, hair pulled back, eyes red-rimmed from crying. Her mother hovered behind her, protective and terrified. For a moment, nobody spoke. Luke stared at her, really looked at her, and saw Matteo in every line of her face. The same determined jaw. The same dark eyes that held more strength than their owners realized. The same quiet dignity even in the face of humiliation. "Lillian," he said softly. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "I remember you. From my father's funeral. You were the one crying." Luke's throat tightened. "Yes. Why are you here?" "Because I made your father a promise." Luke's hands clenched at his sides. "And I broke it. For 20 years I broke it. But that ends today." Tears spilled down Lillian's cheeks. "You saw the video. The whole world saw the video. And the whole world is about to learn what happens when someone hurts Matteo Alvarez's daughter." "I don't want you to hurt them," Lillian said quickly, panic edging her voice. "Please, I just want it to stop. I just want people to stop laughing." "They will." Luke stepped closer, his voice gentle in a way his men had rarely heard. "But not because I made them afraid. Because you're going to show them who you are. And I'm going to make sure they listen." Lillian's mother spoke up, voice trembling. "Mr. Romani, we don't want trouble. We've lived quietly. We've asked for nothing." "I know." Luke's expression softened with guilt. "And that's my failure, not yours. Matteo saved my life, died saving it. His last words were about protecting you both. And I let distance and time make me forget." He looked at Lillian directly. "I can't undo the past, but I can make sure your future is different." "How?" Lillian's voice broke. "Everyone's seen it. Everyone knows. I can't go back to work. I can't face them." "Yes, you can." Luke extended his hand. "But this time you won't be alone." Lillian stared at his hand-scarred knuckles, calloused palm. A hand that had built an empire and buried enemies. A hand that once held her father as he died. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. Luke's grip was gentle but firm, the grip of a man making a vow. "Come with me," he said. "There are people who need to see you standing." They walked back to the diner together. Luke Romani in his immaculate black suit, leading Lillian Alvarez in her stained work uniform, flanked by 3 Mafia soldiers who moved like shadows. Her mother followed behind, clutching her daughter's arm, terrified but unwilling to let her go alone. Main Street had become a gallery of onlookers. Shop owners peered through windows. Neighbors stood on porches. Children pressed their faces against car windows. Phones recorded every step. But this time, the narrative was different. This time, Lillian wasn't stumbling, wasn't falling, wasn't alone. This time, she walked with her head high because Luke Romani, a man the world feared, walked beside her like a shield made flesh. When they reached the diner, Luke opened the door for her. The bell chimed. Every member of his crew stood as she entered, a gesture of respect that made Dale's jaw drop. Lillian froze in the doorway, overwhelmed. "These men," Luke said quietly, "are my family, and as of today, you're under their protection. Anyone who hurts you, disrespects you, or makes you feel less than the remarkable woman your father raised, they answer to all of us." Carmine nodded. "We got you, miss." Enzo smiled gently. "Your father was a hero. His daughter deserves to be treated like royalty." Victor simply placed his hand over his heart, a soldier's salute. Lillian's tears came freely now, but they weren't tears of shame anymore. Luke guided her to a booth and sat across from her, his presence somehow both intimidating and comforting. "Now," he said, his voice taking on an edge of cold steel, "tell me who those boys are, because it's time they learned that some people in this world are protected. And you, Lillian Alvarez, are one of them." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, not approaching, just announcing their presence. The police wouldn't intervene. They knew better. Inside the diner, Lillian took a shaky breath and began to speak. And for the first time since the video went viral, she felt something she hadn't felt in days. Safe. Luke listened as Lillian spoke, her voice trembling at first but growing steadier with each word. She told him about the boys, their names, their faces, the cruelty in their laughter. She told him how they'd circled her like wolves, how they'd kicked the trash at her, how one had zoomed in on her tears for maximum humiliation. When she finished, Luke's jaw was so tight it could have cracked stone. "Brandon Mitchell," he repeated. "Austin Hayes. Dylan Cortez." Lillian nodded, wiping her eyes. Luke pulled out his phone and handed it to Enzo. Find them. All 3. I want them here in 30 minutes. And if they ran? Luke's smile was devoid of warmth. Then find their parents, their siblings, their friends. Someone will tell us where they are. Make it clear that hiding will only make this worse. Enzo disappeared outside with half the crew, engines roaring to life moments later. Luke turned back to Lillian, his expression softening. What happens next is your choice. I won't hurt them unless you ask me to. But they will face you. They will answer for what they did. That much isn't negotiable. I don't want violence, Lillian whispered. I just want them to understand, to feel what they made me feel. They will. Luke's voice carried absolute certainty. I promise you that. 22 minutes later, 3 cars pulled up outside the diner. Brandon Mitchell stumbled out first, looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. His face was pale, his red plaid shirt wrinkled, his hands shaking so badly he could barely walk. Austin Hayes came next, blue hoodie soaked with nervous sweat, eyes darting everywhere like a cornered animal. Dylan Cortez, dark hair, cocky smirk now completely gone, looked like he might vomit on his own shoes. Behind them came their parents, dragged from their homes by stone-faced men in black suits. Mrs. Mitchell was crying. Mr. Hayes kept trying to speak, but no words came out. The Cortez family looked like they were attending their own funeral. Enzo marched the boys inside while their parents were held outside, close enough to hear, far enough to not interfere. The diner went silent. Brandon's eyes found Lillian sitting in the booth, and his knees nearly gave out. Austin made a small, strangled sound. Dylan just stared at the floor, unable to meet her gaze. Luke stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate precision. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Gentlemen, he said quietly, I believe you know Miss Alvarez. Brandon's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Let me clarify the situation, Luke continued, circling them like a shark. This woman, the one you humiliated, assaulted, and filmed for entertainment, is the daughter of the man who saved my life. The man who took bullets meant for my chest. The man who died in my arms after making me promise to protect his family. The color drained from Austin's face. So when you shoved her to the ground, Luke's voice dropped to a razor's edge. When you kicked trash at her, when you filmed her crying and posted it for the world to mock, you didn't just hurt a waitress. You attacked someone under my protection. Dylan actually whimpered. Luke stopped directly in front of Brandon. Look at her. Brandon's head stayed down. I said, look at her. Brandon's head snapped up, tears already streaming down his face. His eyes met Lillian's for one agonizing second before he broke completely. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't think. You didn't think she was human? Luke's words were surgical strikes. You didn't think she had feelings? Or you didn't think there would be consequences? All of it. I don't know. I just... Brandon collapsed to his knees. Please, please, I'll do anything. I'll delete everything. I'll apologize publicly. You'll do all of that, Luke interrupted coldly. But first, you'll hear from her. He gestured to Lillian. Every eye in the diner turned to her. She stood slowly, her mother's hand giving her strength from behind. She approached Brandon, the boy who'd laughed loudest, who'd held the camera closest to her face, who'd called her crying gold. Brandon stayed on his knees, shaking, terrified. Lillian looked down at him and spoke, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of every humiliation she'd endured. You didn't have to know me, she said. You didn't have to know my father or who protects me. You just had to be decent. The simplicity of her words hit harder than any fist could have. Brandon crumbled, face in his hands, shoulders heaving with sobs. Austin and Dylan stood frozen, tears running silently down their faces. You filmed my pain because you thought it was funny, Lillian continued, her voice growing stronger. You thought making me cry would get you views, would make you popular, would make you feel big. She paused, letting the silence stretch. How do you feel now? Small, Brandon whispered through his tears. So small. Lillian turned to Luke, her decision clear in her eyes. Luke nodded and addressed the boys. Here's what happens next. You delete every trace of that video from every platform you posted it to. You make public apologies, video apologies explaining what you did and why it was wrong. You donate to anti-bullying organizations. And you spend the next year doing community service at this diner, working alongside people like Miss Alvarez so you remember what dignity looks like. He leaned down, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. And if I ever hear that any of you have hurt someone like this again, we'll have a very different conversation. One that doesn't end with apologies. Understood? Yes, sir. All three boys stammered in unison. Now apologize to her properly. One by one, they did broken, genuine apologies through tears and shame. And when they finished, Luke turned to the windows where the entire town was watching. "Let this be clear to everyone," he announced. "Cruelty has consequences, and some people in this world are protected whether you know it or not." Outside, the message was received. The boys were still on their knees, tears and snot running down their faces, when movement came from behind the counter. Dale Hutchins stepped forward. His face was ashen, his hands trembling so badly he had to clasp them together to keep them steady. Every eye in the diner turned to him. Luke's crew, Lillian, the sobbing boys, the parents pressed against the windows outside. "Mr. Romani," Dale's voice cracked. I need to say something." Luke's gaze shifted to him, cold and assessing. "Then speak." Dale swallowed hard and turned to Lillian. "I was here that night, in the kitchen. I heard the commotion outside. I heard them laughing. I heard you." His voice broke. "I heard you crying." Lillian's eyes widened. "You were inside?" "Yes." The word came out like a confession at judgment. "I looked out the window, saw what they were doing, saw them circling you, filming you, kicking the trash at you." The room went deathly silent. "And I did nothing," Dale continued, tears now streaming down his weathered face. "I told myself it wasn't my business, that you were tough, that boys will be boys and it would blow over. I went back to counting the register and pretended I didn't see." Lillian took a step back, the betrayal hitting her like a physical blow. "You watched them hurt me and you just went back to work?" "Yes." Dale's shoulders shook. "God help me, yes. And then I went home that night, and I slept in my bed, while you probably didn't sleep at all. I came in the next morning and asked you to work a double like nothing had happened." Luke's expression darkened. Carmine shifted forward, fists clenching. Victor's hand moved toward his jacket, but Luke raised one hand, a silent command to wait. "Why?" Lillian's voice was barely a whisper. "Why didn't you help me?" "Because I'm a coward." Dale's knees buckled and he caught himself against the counter. "Because I've spent 30 years running this diner by keeping my head down and not getting involved. Because I've convinced myself that being neutral is the same as being good." He looked at her with devastation in his eyes. "But watching someone get hurt and doing nothing isn't neutral. It's choosing the side of the people doing the hurting." The truth of his words hung in the air like smoke. Luke spoke, his voice quiet but lethal. "You employed her. She worked under your roof. That makes her your responsibility." "I know. And you failed her." "I know." Dale's voice cracked completely. "I failed her. I failed everything my parents taught me when they built this place. They always said a diner is a community, a place where people take care of each other. And I turned it into a place where a young woman could be terrorized while I counted nickels in the back." He turned to address the entire room, the crew, the boys, the faces pressed against the windows. "For anyone watching, anyone listening, I'm Dale Hutchins, owner of this diner for 32 years. And I want it on record that I witnessed Lillian Alvarez being assaulted and humiliated in my parking lot, and I chose not to intervene. I chose cowardice over courage, comfort over conscience." His voice grew stronger, fueled by shame and determination. "That ends today." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and started typing. "I'm posting this confession publicly. I'm putting it everywhere, Facebook, the town website, anywhere people can see it. And I'm making changes." He looked at Lillian, then at Luke. "Effective immediately. I'm implementing staff protection protocols. Security cameras in the parking lot. Panic buttons behind the counter. Zero-tolerance harassment policies posted on every wall. Any employee who feels unsafe gets an escort to their car. Anyone who threatens them gets banned for life and reported to the police." Luke's expression remained unreadable. "Continue. I'm partnering with the community center to host anti-harassment training, free, open to everyone. Monthly workshops on bystander intervention teaching people that silence isn't neutrality, it's complicity." Dale turned back to Lillian, his voice breaking. "And Lillian, if you'll accept it, you have free meals here for life. Not as payment, there's no paying back what I did to you, but as a reminder. Every time I see you walk through that door, I'll remember the day I failed you, and the promise I made to never fail anyone like that again." Tears rolled down his cheeks unchecked. "I can't undo what happened. Can't take back the fact that I heard you crying and chose the register over your dignity. But I can make damn sure it never happens again. Not here. Not on my watch. Not to you or anyone else." The diner was silent except for Dale's ragged breathing. Lillian stared at him, This man who'd employed her for 3 years, who'd given her extra shifts when money was tight, who'd also abandoned her when she needed him most. Finally, she spoke. "You're right. You can't undo it." Her voice was steady despite the tears on her face. "But you can do better, starting now." Dale nodded, unable to speak. Luke stepped forward, his presence commanding absolute attention. He looked at Dale for a long moment, then gave a single, sharp nod, a gesture that carried the weight of both judgment and grudging approval. "Words are easy, Mr. Hutchins. Action is what matters. You've made promises. I'll be watching to make sure you keep them." "Yes, sir." Luke turned to his crew. "Enzo, make sure every word he just said gets documented. I want copies sent to every business owner in this town. If one person learns something from this, it's worth it." "On it, boss." Luke then addressed everyone watching through the windows, his voice carrying into the street. "Let this be the second lesson today. Staying silent doesn't keep you safe. It makes you guilty." Outside, the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Inside, Lillian felt something shift in her chest, not quite forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of understanding that accountability could be the first step toward change. The sun had begun its descent toward the horizon when Luke finally walked Lillian home. The convoy remained parked outside the diner, a permanent reminder to Millbrook that the day's events weren't a fever dream but cold, hard reality. 6 of Luke's men stayed posted around Dale's establishment, arms crossed, expressions unreadable, silently communicating that this location was now under protection. The rest formed a protective corridor as Luke escorted Lillian and her mother through the streets. The town watched in stunned silence. Mrs. Henderson, the librarian, stood on her porch with her hand over her mouth. Old Mr. Paulson, who ran the barber shop, removed his cap in a gesture of respect as they passed. Teenage girls who'd commented cruel things under the video now looked away in shame. Lillian walked between Luke and Carmine, her mother clutching her arm on the other side. She felt the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation, every phone recording their procession. But for the first time since the video went viral, the attention didn't feel like 1,000 knives cutting into her skin. It felt like witnesses to her vindication. When they reached the apartment above the laundromat, Luke's men took positions at the bottom of the stairs, a visible deterrent to anyone who might think about approaching with ill intent. Luke climbed the stairs with Lillian and her mother, his footsteps surprisingly gentle on the creaking metal. At the door, Lillian's mother, Maria Alvarez, turned to face him. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "Mr. Romani, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't thank me, Mrs. Alvarez." Luke's expression carried the weight of 2 decades of guilt. "I should have been here years ago. Should have checked on you both. Should have made sure Mateo's family never wanted for anything." Maria reached out and took his hand, a gesture that made several of Luke's men shift uncomfortably, unused to seeing anyone touch their boss so familiarly. "Mateo loved you like a brother," she said softly. "He never regretted what he did. He told me once, after he came home that night with bruises and cuts, that saving you felt like the most important thing he'd ever done. He said you were going to do great things." Luke's jaw clenched, emotion threatening to crack his carefully maintained composure. "He was wrong. I've done terrible things. Built an empire on fear and blood. Hurt people who probably didn't deserve it. Made enemies of men who were just trying to survive. Same as me." He looked at Lillian, then back to Maria. "But maybe protecting his daughter can balance the scales a little. Maybe keeping this one promise can mean something." "It means everything," Maria whispered. She pulled him into an embrace, something no one had dared to do in years. Luke stood rigid for a moment, then slowly, carefully, wrapped his arms around the woman whose husband had died in his place. When they separated, both had tears in their eyes. "What happens now?" Lillian asked quietly. Luke turned to her, and when he spoke, his voice carried the certainty of a man who'd made an unbreakable decision. "Now, you live your life without fear. You go to work. You walk these streets with your head high. And if anyone makes you feel unsafe, you call me." He pulled a business card from his jacket and pressed it into her hand. "This number reaches me directly. Day or night. No question is too small. No concern is too minor." Lillian stared at the card, simple, elegant, with just a phone number embossed in black ink. "I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm telling you." Luke's tone left no room for argument. "Your father saved my life. The least I can do is make sure his daughter gets to live hers fully. That means protection, resources, opportunities." He glanced at Maria. "I've already made arrangements. Starting next month, you'll receive a monthly stipend, enough to cover rent, groceries, utilities, with extra for savings. It's not charity. It's a debt I owe. Mr. Romani, we can't. You can, and you will. Luke's voice softened. Mateo would have done the same for my family. This is what honor looks like, Mrs. Alvarez. This is what it means to keep a promise even when the person you made it to is gone. Maria's hands covered her mouth as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Luke looked at Lillian again. You mentioned wanting to go back to school. Study nursing, wasn't it? Lillian's eyes widened. How did you? I asked around. Did my research before I came. He pulled out an envelope from his inside jacket pocket. There's a community college 40 minutes north. Good program. I've covered your tuition for the full 4 years. Books, supplies, everything. You start whenever you're ready. Lillian's knees nearly buckled. I don't understand. Why would you do all this? Because your father deserved better than bleeding out on a warehouse floor at 37. Because you deserve better than being terrorized outside a diner for internet clout. Because the world is cruel enough without good people suffering for no reason. He placed the envelope in her trembling hands. And because I failed Mateo Alvarez for 20 years. I won't fail his daughter for one more day. The weight of his words settled over the small landing like a benediction. Lillian looked down at the envelope, then up at Luke, this man whose reputation preceded him like thunder, whose name made criminals flee and police hesitate, who'd built an empire on fear and power. And all she saw was someone trying desperately to make amends for a promise broken by time and distance. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. For coming. For making them answer. For, her voice broke, for remembering my father. I never forgot him, Lillian. I just convinced myself that money in an account was the same as being present. That distance was protection, rather than abandonment. Luke's voice carried a rare vulnerability. Your father taught me that real strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about who you're willing to stand up for when no one's watching. He straightened, the moment of vulnerability passing as his authority reasserted itself. My men will patrol this neighborhood regularly. You won't see them, but they'll be here. And that diner Dale's place, it's under our watch now. Anyone who works there is protected. Carmine stepped forward. Miss Alvarez, you've got my number too. Any of the crew. We're your extended family now. Whether you like it or not, Victor added with a rare smile. Lillian laughed through her tears, the first genuine laugh she'd managed in days. Luke nodded to his men, then turned back to Lillian and Maria one final time. Mateo Alvarez saved my life on August 12th, 2005. I've carried that debt for 20 years. Today, I start repaying it properly. He descended the stairs, his men falling into formation around him. As they reached the parking lot, Luke paused and looked back up at the apartment where Lillian and her mother stood on the landing, watching. He placed his hand over his heart, a soldier's salute, a son's respect, a promise renewed. Then he climbed into his Escalade, and the convoy began its slow departure from Millbrook. But everyone knew they'd be back if needed. And everyone knew that Lillian Alvarez would never walk alone again. Inside the apartment, Lillian opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a full scholarship letter, a bank card with her name on it, and a handwritten note in surprisingly elegant script. Your father was the bravest man I ever knew. His daughter deserves every opportunity he never got to see her achieve. Make him proud. L.R. Lillian pressed the note to her chest and cried not from pain or shame this time, but from the overwhelming weight of being seen, protected, and valued. Her mother wrapped her in an embrace, and together they stood in their small apartment, watching through the window as the last of the black cars disappeared down Main Street. The video was still out there. The comments were still cruel. The humiliation was still fresh. But Lillian Alvarez was no longer alone, and that made all the difference. 3 weeks passed. Millbrook settled into an uneasy new normal, one where black SUVs occasionally rolled through town, where Dale's Diner had become the safest establishment in 3 counties, and where Lillian Alvarez walked the streets with a confidence that hadn't existed before. The video was still online. Luke's team had tried to scrub it completely, but the internet was forever. Still, the narrative had shifted. What began as mockery had transformed into a cautionary tale about cruelty and consequence. The comments section had become a battlefield where people argued about bullying, accountability, and whether mob justice was justice at all. But Lillian stopped reading them. She had better things to focus on, like the acceptance letter to nursing school that arrived on a Thursday morning. Like the apology videos Brandon, Austin, and Dylan posted genuine, broken confessions that went more viral than their original cruelty. Like the community service hours they were logging at the diner, where they worked alongside her in uncomfortable silence, learning what humility tasted like. And like the phone calls, Luke called every Sunday at 6 p.m. without fail. The first call, Lillian had been terrified to answer. What did you say to a mafia boss? How did you make small talk with someone whose reputation included words like ruthless and dangerous? But Luke's voice on the other end had been surprisingly warm. Just checking in. Making sure you're okay. Making sure no one's giving you trouble. I'm fine, Mr. Romani. Really. Luke, he'd corrected gently. Your father and I were brothers in every way that mattered. You can call me Luke. That first conversation lasted 7 minutes. The second week, it lasted 15. By the third week, they were talking for 45 minutes about her classes, her mother's health, his memories of Matteo, the town's slow transformation. Luke told her stories she'd never heard. About the time Matteo had beaten him at poker 3 nights running and donated all the winnings to a children's hospital. About how her father used to sing badly while working the docks, driving everyone crazy but somehow making the days feel lighter. About the night of the ambush, details Lillian had never known, and how her father's last words weren't about fear or regret but about love for his family. He was proud of you, Luke said during their fourth call. Used to carry your school photos in his wallet, showed them to everyone. My daughter, he'd say. She's going to do something amazing. Lillian had cried hearing that. Luke's voice had grown rough with emotion. He was right. You are amazing. And he'd be so proud of the woman you've become. These conversations became the anchor of Lillian's week, a connection to the father she'd lost too young, filtered through the man whose life her father had saved. But the relationship wasn't just phone calls. Luke came to Millbrook every other Saturday. The first visit, he'd brought Enzo and Carmine, and they'd taken Lillian and her mother to lunch at a restaurant 2 towns over somewhere nice, where waitstaff treated them like royalty because Luke Romani's presence commanded respect. Lillian had been nervous, surrounded by dangerous men in expensive suits, but they'd been surprisingly normal. Enzo told jokes. Carmine showed her photos of his daughter, a girl about Lillian's age, who was studying to be a teacher. Victor, usually stone-faced, had actually smiled when Maria complimented his tie. You're not what I expected, Lillian admitted halfway through the meal. Luke raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? I don't know. More. Threatening? We can be threatening, Carmine said with a grin. But not to family. Is that what we are? Lillian asked quietly. Family? Luke's expression grew serious. Your father was my brother. That makes you my niece in every way that matters. Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. Sacrifice does. And Matteo gave everything for me. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly, a gesture that felt both protective and promising. So yes, you're family. And family looks out for each other. The second visit, Luke came alone. He helped Maria fix a leaking faucet in their apartment, his expensive suit jacket draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up, looking almost domestic as he worked under the sink. You know plumbing? Lillian had asked, surprised. I know a lot of things people don't expect, Luke grunted as he tightened a pipe. My father believed in practical skills, said a man who can't fix his own problems will always be at someone else's mercy. Your father sounds wise. He was. Also terrifying. Luke emerged from under the sink, wiping his hands on a rag. But he taught me that power without purpose is just violence. That strength should protect, not destroy. He'd looked at her directly. That's what I'm trying to do now. Use what I've built for something that matters. Later that afternoon, Luke had asked to see photos of Matteo. Maria brought out old albums, pictures of a younger, vibrant man with Lillian's eyes and smile. Matteo at the docks. Matteo holding baby Lillian. Matteo and Maria on their wedding day. Luke had gone very quiet, carefully studying each image. He looks happy here, he said, pointing to a photo of Matteo grilling in their tiny backyard, laughing at something off camera. He was, Maria confirmed. Even when money was tight, even when work was hard, he found joy. He said life was too short to spend it miserable. He was right about that too. Luke closed the album gently, reverently. I've spent 20 years building an empire and I'm not sure I've been happy a single day. But these past few weeks, making sure you two are okay, keeping my promise that's felt right. You're a good man, Luke, Maria said softly. I'm a man trying to be better. He stood, preparing to leave. There's a difference. But before he left, he'd pulled Lillian aside. I want you to understand something. This protection, this support, it's not transactional. You don't owe me anything. Not loyalty, not silence, not gratitude beyond what you'd give any friend. But what I do for you, I do because it's right. Because your father deserves to have his daughter thrive. You're free to live your life however you choose. Go to school, build a career, fall in love, leave this town, whatever you want. His expression grew fierce. But know that wherever you go, whatever you do, you've got a family watching your back. You've got resources if you need them. And you've got a phone number that will always be answered. Lillian had hugged him then impulsively, without thinking. Luke had frozen, surprised, then carefully returned the embrace. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being who my father believed you were." When Luke left that day, Carmine was waiting by the car with a knowing smile. "You're getting soft, boss." "Maybe." Luke climbed into the Escalade. "Or maybe I'm finally getting it right." As they drove away, Lillian watched from the window, feeling something she hadn't felt since her father died. Protected, valued, part of something larger than herself. The video might still exist. The humiliation might still sting. But Lillian Alvarez was no longer defined by her worst moment. She was defined by who stood beside her when it mattered. And that made all the difference in the world. 6 months later, spring arrived in Millbrook with dogwood blossoms and warm breezes that carried the promise of new beginnings. Lillian stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the crisp white collar of her nursing student uniform. Her clinical rotation started in an hour, and nervous energy hummed through her veins. "You look professional," her mother said from the doorway, pride shining in her eyes. "I look terrified." "You look like your father, determined and brave." Lillian smiled at her reflection. The girl who'd fallen crying in a parking lot 6 months ago felt like a different person. She'd cut her hair shorter, carried herself taller, learned that strength didn't mean never falling, it meant getting back up with people who refused to let you stay down. Her phone buzzed. "Luke. First day. You've got this. Make Mateo proud." She typed back quickly. "I'll try. Thank you for everything." "Luke. No thanks necessary. That's what family does." Lillian pocketed her phone and grabbed her bag. Her mother handed her a packed lunch, homemade, wrapped with care, containing her father's favorite sandwich that had become hers too. "He'd be so proud," Maria whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. "I know, Mama. I feel it." Outside, the morning sun painted Main Street gold. Dale's Diner was already open, its parking lot camera one of many security upgrades quietly recording the peaceful morning. Brandon Mitchell's car was parked in the back. He was on month 4 of his community service, arriving before dawn to prep the kitchen. The town had changed in small but significant ways. Anti-bullying posters hung in shop windows. The community center hosted monthly workshops. People intervened now when they saw cruelty instead of filming it. Millbrook was learning. As Lillian walked toward the bus stop, Mrs. Henderson called out from her porch. "Good luck today, dear." "Thank you." Mr. Paulson waved from his barber shop. 2 teenagers, girls who'd left cruel comments on the original video, nodded respectfully as they passed. Lillian had become something unexpected. A symbol, not of victimhood, but of resilience. Of what happened when cruelty met consequence. Of the power of having someone believe you were worth protecting. The bus arrived, and Lillian climbed aboard, finding a seat by the window. As Millbrook disappeared behind her, she thought about the journey ahead. Nursing school would be hard. Clinical rotations would be exhausting. She'd face challenges that made that terrible night seem small in comparison. But she wouldn't face them alone. Her phone buzzed again, a group text this time. "Enzo. Knock 'em dead, kid." "Figuratively?" "Boss says I have to clarify that now." "Carmine. My daughter says good luck from one future healthcare worker to another. Victor. Proud of you." Lillian smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. The bus rolled through farmland and small towns, eventually reaching the hospital where her rotation would take place. The building loomed massive and intimidating, white walls, endless windows, the constant flow of ambulances and people in scrubs. She took a deep breath and stepped off the bus. Inside, the orientation was overwhelming. 20 other students, all looking equally nervous. Instructors with clipboards and high expectations. The sharp smell of antiseptic, the beeping of monitors, the reality that people's lives would eventually depend on decisions she made. But Lillian focused on why she was here. Because her father had believed education was the path to a better life. Because Luke had given her the opportunity when no one else would. Because surviving cruelty meant nothing if she didn't build something meaningful from the survival. The first day passed in a blur: tours, introductions, basic protocols. Her hands shook when she first entered a patient's room. Her voice wavered when speaking to the supervising nurse. But she didn't quit. By the time she boarded the return bus that evening, exhaustion had replaced nervousness. But beneath the fatigue was something stronger: purpose. When she arrived back in Millbrook, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded her of the morning her life changed. The morning Luke Romani rolled into town with an army at his back. Her mother was waiting at the apartment with dinner. How was it? Terrifying, amazing, hard, perfect. Lillian collapsed onto the couch. I think I'm going to love it. Maria's smile could have lit the entire town. Your father would be so happy. After dinner, Lillian called Luke. He answered on the first ring. How'd it go? She told him everything, the nervousness, the patience, the overwhelming feeling of being exactly where she was supposed to be. Luke listened without interrupting, and when she finished, his voice carried a warmth that made her eyes sting with tears. Matteo dreamed of you having opportunities he never got. You're living that dream, Lillian. You're honoring his sacrifice by refusing to let cruelty define you. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you know. I just made sure nothing stood in your way. They talked for another 20 minutes about her classes, about Luke's week, about the small victories and daily challenges that made up a life. Before hanging up, Luke said something that would stay with her forever. Your father gave me a second chance at life. You've given me a second chance at being the man he believed I could be. So thank you, Lillian, for letting me keep my promise, for reminding me what matters. I love you, Uncle Luke. The title came naturally now, easily, like it had always been there waiting. A pause on the other end. Then, rough with emotion, I love you too, kid. 2 weeks later, Luke stood in front of a cemetery gate he hadn't passed through in 5 years. Matteo's grave was in the back corner, beneath an oak tree that had grown taller since the funeral. The headstone was simple. Matteo Alvarez, beloved husband and father. A hero. Luke knelt, placing a bouquet of white lilies against the stone, Matteo's favorite, according to Maria. Hey, brother, he said quietly. I know it's been a while. I'm sorry for that. Got lost in the Empire building, the power plays, the blood and business. Convinced myself that staying away was respect, when really it was cowardice. A breeze rustled through the oak leaves. But I'm here now. And I need you to know I kept my promise. Finally, your daughter is safe, protected, thriving. She's in nursing school, Matteo. She's going to save lives, just like you saved mine. Luke's throat tightened. She's got your heart, your strength, your belief that people are worth protecting even when it costs you everything. He traced the letters of Matteo's name carved in stone. I've set up a trust fund. Full ride through school. Living expenses covered. She'll never want for anything. Neither will Maria. The wind picked up, almost like an answer. And the town, the one where she was hurt, they've learned. Those boys who hurt her? They're different now. Humbled, working to make amends. The whole community is paying attention, intervening, protecting each other. Luke stood, brushing dirt from his knees. I can't bring you back. Can't undo the bullets that took you from your family. But I can make sure your sacrifice meant something. That your daughter lives the life you dreamed for her. That's my promise, Matteo. That's my legacy to you. He placed his hand on the headstone, a final gesture of respect, of love, of brotherhood that transcended death. Rest easy, brother. I've got them, and I won't let you down again. As Luke walked back to his car, where Enzo waited patiently, he felt lighter than he had in 20 years. The Empire still existed. The power still mattered. The reputation still preceded him. But now it all served a purpose beyond profit. It protected a young woman who deserved to chase her dreams without fear. It honored a man who'd given everything for a chance at redemption. And it proved that sometimes, the most important promises are the ones you keep long after anyone would blame you for forgetting. Luke climbed into the Escalade. Where to, boss? Enzo asked. Home, but stop by the diner first. I want to check on things. As they drove through Millbrook past the reformed boys, past the watchful cameras, past the community that had learned that cruelty has consequences, Luke allowed himself something rare. A smile. Not the cold, calculated smile of a man closing a deal, but the genuine smile of someone who'd finally made things right. Somewhere in heaven, Matteo Alvarez smiled too. His daughter was safe. His sacrifice had meaning, and the brother he'd saved had become the man he'd always believed he could be. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.